So you remember sitting down at your desk, the teacher's passing out test begins, 7 minutes go by, and the only thing you got written down is your name, right? Guilty as charged. I've been there plenty of times, and trust me, it is not a good feeling. You're just there confused. You're like, fuck, I'm about to bomb this shit. But that scenario is literally how most beginners feel after consuming fitness content, especially in today's age. You're overloaded with so much information, but you don't really know where to start. And this is where people will watch video after video, but still not understand the basics. And when you don't understand anything, let alone the basics, this is where people will stay being frustrated, confused, and not really know how to go about fitness altogether. So let's break down the most common myths that people run into when it comes to going about their fitness journey. Starting with myth number one: carbs make you fat. Now, I want you to think about this, right? Because you'll see a whole bunch of diets online, preaching these low carb diets. But the problem with that is people will associate those low carb diets as carbs being the one true enemy. Carbs are the reason why they're fat. Carbs cause fat gain. When in reality, that's simply not the case. It's not as black as white as that. Because although carbs have the weight go down in terms of the scale, the weight going down on the scale isn't necessarily factoring in the body fat being burned off your body. In most cases, the body fat will still remain. This is where people will get skinny fat, and this is where all the confusion begins. You want body fat to be melted off your body. You want to have a flatter stomach. You want to have definition. You want to have those abs. Maybe in some cases, some motherfuckers just want to see their Johnson down below. And they haven't seen that shit for years because they got a big ass fucking stomach, big ass gut covering that shit. Their wife can't see it. They can't see it. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it's simply as getting rid of that. But the whole point, the whole goal in mind is the fact that that's what we want to get rid of. You know? And when you assume that carbs is the main issue in that, it's going to leave you in confusion, and you're going to be in this nonstop cycle, because the real issue is just overeating. You're overeating in those carbs, and this is where those the excessive amount of carbs you're having will be associated with your fat gain, because you're at a surplus. You're at a surplus, thus will lead to fat gain. But that's where the confusion is, guys. That's where the confusion is, guys. Thinking that you're not eating, you're not overeating. And this is where you got motherfuckers online talking about having fruits before going to bed will make you fat. I wish I was joking on that. I saw that on a TikTok live the other day. Just because a motherfucker has Coach right next to his name. It's insane, guys. But don't associate carbs with being bad. Chances are you're probably overeating. But once you get proportions actually dialed in, and you actually use your carbs around your training, this is where you understand that carbs are actually meant to fuel you throughout your training, throughout your diet overall. That way you can actually head towards your goal at being at a deficit in a proper manner while utilizing carbs within your diet. But let's go over to myth number 2. You need cardio to lose fat. People associate doing cardio as being the number one factor into having fat loss, but that's simply not the case. And in the very start, in the very beginning, you'll have people doing 5 miles every day of the week, and the thing is, when you do that excessive amount of cardio, especially when you're starting from the very beginning on a deficit, you run into 2 problems. Problem number 1 will be you're going to lose your muscle on top of that. So if you're already at a calorie deficit and you're running for hours on end or doing a bunch of miles from the very jump, you're not only going to burn off calories, but you're going to burn off muscle as well. And that's not what we want, because we want to keep the muscle that we build in the gym. That way it can it shows as definition. It gives you that definition, that contrast, that V taper as you're crunching down on body fat, burning off that fat, melting that shit away. And we actually want to keep the muscle that we're building in the gym. But then problem number 2 is that you're starting the baseline way too high. So let's take it to you. Maybe you don't go out for a run, right? Maybe you're not doing miles on end, but let's say you're starting at the gym and doing an hour of cardio. When you put your baseline at such a high number, your body's going to adapt to that. Because when your body adapts to an hour of running, the only way you're going to be able to burn more body fat is to add on top of that. So you got to add in an hour and 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes. And I don't know about you, but I'm not doing fucking an hour and 40 minutes of cardio just to burn off some fucking body fat. Like, and the thing is, it's not even needed. But that's what people don't realize is your body's gonna adjust, and now you gotta trickle in, working with fewer calories, but then you have to actually do more cardio because you started off so high. So I want you to think of cardio as something as a tool that you can utilize along your fat loss, and start off at 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. Start that around for 2 weeks, 2 weeks, three, and then you can lessen your calories a little bit as you go within the weeks, put yourself more in a deficit, and then just add on to the cardio. Increasing from 20 minutes to 25 minutes sounds a whole lot better than starting at 1 hour and then later on you got to end up doing an hour and a half of cardio. Yeah, I'd rather do option one from 20 to 25. Once you understand that, let's go over to the final myth when it comes to getting into fitness. You need supplements to make progress. Guys, you have to realize, before I even start, guys, it always seems like if I were to grade a tier in terms of how people go about their diet or how they start, I would have to put supplements as the highest tier that people prioritize right from jump when they go to getting into fitness, man. I don't know what it is, but it seems just like everyone wants to fill the stack, get a bunch of stack pre-workout, all of this shit. When in reality, all you really need, guys, I promise you, it's just Whole Foods, man. Guys, you have to realize there's a reason why the fitness industry is a multi-billion-dollar company, guys. Because the supplements are basically the backbone of that industry. You got your favorite influencers having these discounts on certain supplements to push to you guys, and they go about their experience of how if you have this, you'll look like me. All in the sense of pushing the product. But the thing is, guys, I want you guys to look at supplements just like the example with cardio. It's a form of a tool. You know what I mean? Now, where supplements would make sense is, let's say you're someone at a certain state that doesn't get enough sunlight. I'd probably prioritize getting vitamin D within your supplement stack. Creatine, there's so much research done on that, you know, or let's say you're struggling with getting in protein intake. Protein powder is an efficient supplement that you can use. That way it's easier for you to consume protein and hit your marker on that macronutrient, but supplements aren't really needed, guys. Supplements aren't really needed, especially in the very beginning. I'd rather you just make the switch to eating a lot better and having more whole foods in your diet. But supplements are just a tool, you know what I mean? And most of the time, it's such a push product to where, people get blindsided and think that, they need all this whole stack that this influencer has to be able to get as shredded and ripped, you know what I mean? But I'm telling you right now, that's simply not the case, and you'll do just fine by being at a calorie deficit, cleaning up your diet in terms of switching over to whole foods, and just having a system in place so that you can actually see your progress within the weeks, taking weekly photos just to see where body fat is being reduced in, that right there will make a massive transformation over any supplement. You hear things like L-carnitine, fat burners, all that stuff. Guys, if you're not in a deficit or have a system in place and have like a certain system that like you're following by, those aren't going to be the magic pills to melt off that fat magically. You still have to do the work required in order for you to be at a fat loss and still train hard at the gym, still be well rested, prioritizing your sleep, which a lot of people like lack and don't understand the importance of. But simple switches like that are gonna do you tremendously when it comes to going after your fitness goals. But once you understand all those movements in terms of movement, consistency, nutrition, once you understand all those things, man, your fitness journey is gonna be a lot smoother and you're gonna have a better understanding of how to go about it. So guys, if that helped out in terms of understanding fitness a little better, I'll be coming out with more videos discussing certain topics, different topics, about how to go about fitness, how to go about training. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.